The alarm bells echoed through the massive crystal halls of the Galactic Council headquarters. Admiral Vextar's tentacles trembled as he held the intelligence report that had arrived just hours ago. For 3,000 years, he had served the Galaxy's most powerful military alliance, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Show me the data again," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had witnessed countless wars across a dozen star systems. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing technical specifications that made even the most experienced alien engineers gasp. The humans, those newcomers who had barely mastered faster-than-light travel, had somehow built a warship that broke every rule of civilized warfare. Captain Lee Hyun commanded this vessel called the HSS Prometheus. The young human officer had no idea that his ship violated 17 different interstellar treaties that had kept the galaxy peaceful for millennia. These weren't just guidelines, they were sacred laws written in the blood of billions who had died in the great wars of the past. The ship's reactor alone produced more energy than most star systems. Its weapons could crack planets in half. Its shields could deflect the combined firepower of an entire battle fleet. The alien council members stared at the readings in disbelief. "How is this possible?" whispered Councillor Zethra, her scales shifting colors with fear. "Their species just learned to leave their home planet 50 years ago. We've been watching them struggle with basic space technology." Admiral Vextar's eyes glowed brighter as he processed the implications. "Perhaps that's exactly why they built this monster. They don't know the rules because no one told them the rules existed." The council chamber erupted in heated discussions. Representatives from 12 different species argued over what this meant for galactic security. Some called it an act of war. Others insisted it was merely ignorance. A few suggested immediate military action before humanity could build more of these devastating ships. "We must remember," said Elder Morden, his ancient voice cutting through the chaos, "that humans were never invited to sign the Treaty of Eternal Peace. They developed their military technology in complete isolation, believing they needed to defend themselves against unknown threats in the darkness of space." The weight of this revelation settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. For centuries, the galaxy had operated under carefully negotiated rules of engagement. Wars were fought with limited weapons, civilian populations were protected, and total annihilation was forbidden. These treaties had prevented another galactic apocalypse, but humanity had never agreed to these limitations. They had built their ultimate warship, believing they might face enemies who would show no mercy. In their minds, the Prometheus was simply good preparation for the unknown dangers of the cosmos. Admiral Vextar closed the report and looked around the chamber at faces filled with worry and confusion. The galaxy's peaceful order, maintained for 3 millennia, now faced its greatest challenge from the most unlikely source: a young species that had never learned that some weapons were too terrible to build. "Prepare an emergency diplomatic mission," he finally announced. "We need to meet these humans before they decide we're the enemy they've been preparing to fight." Captain Park Minho stood on the bridge of humanity's greatest achievement, staring out at the stars through reinforced viewing ports that could withstand the blast of a supernova. The message from Earth Command had arrived that morning, and its contents still made his heart race with excitement and nervousness. "First official diplomatic contact with alien civilizations," he muttered to himself, reading the orders for the 10th time. "Proceed to Kepler Station with full honors escort." The ship's artificial intelligence, which the crew simply called Atlas, materialized as a shimmering hologram beside him. "Captain, I must inform you of a concerning development. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple alien vessels approaching Kepler Station, and their scanning equipment appears to be analyzing our weapon systems." Minho frowned. "What are they finding?" "According to intercepted communications, they have classified our armaments as catastrophic threat level and are requesting immediate emergency protocols from their respective governments." The captain couldn't help but laugh. "Catastrophic? Atlas, run a diagnostic on our weapons. Are we showing any malfunction indicators?" "All systems are operating within normal parameters, Captain. Our quantum reactors are running at standard efficiency. Adaptive armor is responding perfectly to environmental changes, and the matter conversion torpedo arrays are in standby mode as ordered. Park Min-ho walked over to the tactical display, where holographic representations of the Prometheus's capabilities glowed softly in the dim bridge lighting. To him and his crew, these were simply the tools they needed to protect humanity in a dangerous universe. The quantum reactors provided clean, unlimited energy. The adaptive armor could adjust its molecular structure to deflect any known weapon. The torpedoes could convert matter directly into energy, providing surgical precision or devastating power as needed. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Kim Ji-soo from the communications station, "we're receiving multiple hails from alien vessels. They're requesting that we power down all weapon systems and submit to escort by their security forces." Min-ho exchanged glances with his first officer, Commander Lee Jun-ho. "Security escort? We're on a diplomatic mission." Atlas processed the incoming data streams and projected his findings. "Captain, it appears that our standard military configuration exceeds their definition of acceptable firepower by approximately 4,000%. Their largest warships generate roughly the same energy output as our auxiliary backup systems." The realization hit the bridge crew like a cold wave. What humanity considered normal military preparation, the galaxy saw, as an existential threat. The Prometheus hadn't been designed to intimidate or conquer. Earth's engineers had simply assumed that any hostile alien species would possess similar or superior technology. "They think we built a planet killer," whispered Commander Lee, his voice barely audible. "Did we?" asked Min-ho, though he already knew the answer. Atlas ran quick calculations. "At maximum yield, our primary weapons array could indeed render most inhabited worlds uninhabitable. However, this was designed as a defensive capability against unknown threats." Captain Park Min-ho looked around, his bridge at the crew who had trained for years to operate humanity's first true starship. They had dreamed of making peaceful contact with alien civilizations, of sharing knowledge and culture across the cosmos. Instead, they were being treated like harbingers of destruction. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," he ordered. "Let's try to explain that we come in peace, even if our ship doesn't look like it." The meeting room aboard Kepler Station buzzed with tension as representatives from a dozen alien species surrounded Captain Kim Sora. She had never imagined her first diplomatic encounter would feel more like a military tribunal. The aliens' faces, tentacles, and various appendages all showed the same emotion despite their different biologies. Fear. "Captain Kim," spoke Ambassador Velnash, his translator converting his clicking sounds into perfect Korean, "your vessel's presence has caused considerable alarm throughout our sectors. We must witness a demonstration of your weapons capabilities to properly assess the threat level." Sora shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "With respect, Ambassador, we're here for peaceful negotiations. I don't see why a weapons test is necessary." The room erupted in a chorus of alien voices, all speaking over each other. Finally, Admiral Crexton, a towering being with 4 arms, slammed his fist on the table. "Because human, your single ship reads on our sensors as more dangerous than our entire combined battle fleet. We need to know what we're dealing with." Looking around the room at faces filled with suspicion and worry, Sora realized they wouldn't proceed with any talks until their fears were addressed. "Very well. We can conduct a controlled demonstration against the abandoned asteroid field in Sector 7, but I want to make it clear, this is purely for show." 3 hours later, observation. Ships from multiple alien governments maintained a safe distance of 50,000 kilometers from the target zone. The asteroid field had been dead for centuries, nothing but floating rocks and debris left over from some ancient cosmic collision. Captain Kim Sora stood on her bridge, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. "Atlas, prepare torpedo bay." 1. Set yield to minimum. I repeat, minimum power. "Captain," her weapons officer Lieutenant Park Sun-ho called out. "Minimum yield is still rated for small moon elimination. Are you certain about this?" "These asteroids are basically space junk," Sora replied. "Minimum yield should be more than enough for a demonstration." The targeting system locked onto a medium-sized asteroid roughly the size of a city block. Through the view screen, she could see the alien observation ships positioned at what they clearly considered a safe distance. "Fire when ready, Lieutenant." The Prometheus barely shuddered as the torpedo launched. To the human crew, it seemed like an almost gentle release of energy, a tiny spark compared to their ship's full capabilities. What happened next would be talked about in alien civilizations for generations. The torpedo connected with its target, and for a split second nothing seemed to happen. Then the asteroid simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not shattered, but converted entirely into pure energy that expanded outward in a perfect sphere of brilliant light. The energy wave struck neighboring asteroids, which also vanished instantly. The chain reaction spread through the entire field like wildfire, each rock adding its mass to the growing explosion of converted matter. "Oh no," whispered Lieutenant Park, as sensor readings showed the gravitational effects rippling outward. Within minutes, the entire asteroid belt was gone. The gravitational disruption was pulling debris from nearby sectors, creating a whirlpool effect in space itself. Emergency alerts began flooding in from alien ships as their navigation systems went haywire. Captain Sora stared at the viewscreen, in shock. "Atlas, what just happened?" "The torpedo performed exactly as designed, Captain. Matter conversion was achieved at 99.7% efficiency." As panicked communications poured in from the alien observers, Sora realized with growing horror that what humans considered their gentlest weapon had just rewritten the local stellar geography. "Send our apologies to all vessels," she ordered quietly. "And maybe we should discuss lowering our weapons specifications." The footage from Kepler Station spread across the galaxy faster than wildfire, carried by quantum communication networks that connected thousands of worlds. In council chambers, military headquarters, and civilian news broadcasts, the same horrifying images played on repeat, an entire asteroid field simply vanishing in a cascade of pure energy. On the war world of Zephyria Prime, General Thaxmore stood before the Empire's most advanced tactical computers. His species had conquered 17 star systems through superior military strategy, and their war machines were considered the galaxy's finest. But as the simulation results appeared on his screens, his warriors' confidence crumbled. "Run it." Again, he ordered his technicians, refusing to believe the numbers. The holographic battle played out in fast-forward. Zephyrian dreadnoughts, each the size of a small city, engaged the human vessel called Prometheus. Within minutes, 97% of the Imperial fleet was destroyed. The remaining 3% survived, only because they had retreated beyond the human weapon's effective range. "This cannot be accurate," General Thaxmore growled. "No single ship could defeat our entire armada." His chief analyst, a thin creature with multiple eyes, nervously adjusted his equipment. "Sir, we've run the simulation 47 times with different variables. The result is consistent. The human vessel's firepower exceeds our combined fleet capacity by a factor of 16. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out in a dozen military commands. The proud Altarian Navy, which had never lost a space battle, watched their simulations end in complete annihilation. The Keth hegemony's brutal assault fleets, feared throughout 3 sectors, calculated their survival chances at less than 1%. Within 72 hours, the Galactic Council convened in the most important emergency session in recorded history. Representatives from 14 major civilizations filled the Great Assembly Hall, their voices creating a symphony of panic and outrage. Council Speaker Mordak called for order with his ancient staff of office. "The situation is clear. Humanity possesses technology that threatens the balance of power maintained for 3 millennia. We cannot allow this to continue." "They destroyed an entire asteroid field with a single shot," declared Ambassador Velthar of the Rigelian Combine. "What happens when they decide to test their weapons on inhabited worlds?" The vote was unanimous. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations would unite to deliver an ultimatum to humanity: surrender the Prometheus and submit to galactic oversight, or face immediate destruction by their combined fleets. The message reached Earth Command within hours. Admiral Choi Daeho, a weathered veteran who had spent decades preparing humanity for potential alien contact, read the ultimatum 3 times before calling an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. The council chamber fell silent as Admiral Choi stood to address Earth's military leadership. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with the fire that had driven humanity to the stars. "Gentlemen and ladies," he began, placing the alien ultimatum on the table. "After 50 years of wondering whether we were alone in the universe, we now have our answer. We are not alone, and our new neighbors want us to surrender our only means of defending ourselves." Defense Secretary Yoon Mira leaned forward. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" Joy Daeho's response would echo through history, spoken with the quiet dignity that had always defined humanity's finest moments. "No." The word hung in the air like a challenge to the cosmos itself. The war room, deep beneath Earth Command, buzzed with activity as intelligence officers worked around the clock, tracking alien fleet movements across 17 different star systems. Admiral Jang Wonho studied the holographic display showing hundreds of red dots converging toward human space, like a slow-moving storm front. "How long do we have?" asked Defense Secretary Yoon Mira, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were facing. Lieutenant Colonel Kim Hyun-soo, head of Deep Space Intelligence, highlighted several sectors on the map. "Based on their current speed and formation patterns, the Alien Alliance will reach our outer colonies in approximately 6 weeks. The main force should arrive at Earth in 8 to 10 weeks. Admiral Jang absorbed this information while studying the tactical readouts. 14 different alien civilizations had contributed ships to this massive armada. Some fleets contained vessels larger than anything humanity had ever built, while others brought advanced technologies that Earth scientists could barely understand. "Sir," called out Commander Park Jaewon from the communication station, "we're receiving panicked transmissions from our deep space monitoring posts. They're reporting that some alien ships are the size of small moons." The Admiral nodded grimly. "Then it's time to reveal something that's been classified at the highest levels." He turned to address the room full of Earth's top military minds. "The Prometheus was never intended to be our only warship. It was our prototype." A stunned silence fell over the war room. Even Secretary Yoon looked shocked by this revelation. 3 years ago," Admiral Jang continued, "our scientists made a breakthrough in quantum reactor technology. We realized that if hostile aliens existed, they would likely possess military capabilities far beyond our imagination. So we designed the Prometheus not as a luxury, but as what we thought would be the minimum required to defend ourselves." He activated another holographic display showing construction facilities hidden throughout the solar system. "We have been quietly building 12 identical vessels. When the Prometheus performed its demonstration at Kepler Station, we accelerated production schedules. The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. Humanity hadn't just built one planet-killing warship by accident. They had built 13 of them on purpose." Commander Lee So-hyun, the fleet's chief engineer, raised her hand. "Admiral, with respect, how did we develop technology that apparently surpasses civilizations thousands of years older than us?" Admiral Jang smiled grimly. "Because we assumed we were at a disadvantage. Every human engineer, scientist, and military planner worked under the assumption that any alien species we encountered would be more advanced, more numerous, and more hostile than us. We built our ships to fight enemies we thought would be impossible to defeat." Meanwhile, in the Altarian command ship approaching human space, General Vextar reviewed the latest intelligence reports with growing confusion. These humans achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. How could they possibly develop weapons that make our ancient technologies look primitive? His science advisor, Dr. Melthor, had been studying human development patterns for weeks. "General, I believe they developed their military technology in complete isolation, without any reference point for what constitutes reasonable firepower. They built weapons designed to fight enemies that exist only in their imaginations. And those imaginary enemies," General Vextar realized with dawning horror, "were apparently much more dangerous than anything that actually exists in our galaxy." As construction crews worked frantically to complete humanity's growing fleet, the galaxy's most powerful civilizations began to understand they had awakened something they were completely unprepared to face. The emergency alert pierced through the bridge of the Prometheus like a knife through silence. Captain Yoon Ji-hoon was reviewing diplomatic reports when the communication from New Geneva Colony reached them. carried by quantum relay across 47 light-years of space. Mayday! Mayday! This is New Geneva Control. We are under attack by unknown vessels. Orbital defense platforms are destroyed. They're targeting civilian areas. Request immediate assistance. The transmission cut to static, leaving the bridge crew staring at each other in stunned disbelief. New Geneva was home to 2 million colonists, mostly families who had volunteered to help humanity expand among the stars. Atlas, plot a course for New Geneva. Maximum speed, Captain Yoon ordered, his voice cold with controlled fury. Captain, the AI responded, at maximum quantum drive velocity. We can reach New Geneva in 43 minutes. However, I must inform you that long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures consistent with orbital bombardment. The journey felt like an eternity. Every minute that passed meant more innocent lives lost. The Prometheus pushed through space faster than any human vessel had ever traveled, its quantum engines screaming at red-line power levels. When they finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Geneva system, the sight that greeted them would haunt Captain Yoon for the rest of his life. The colony's orbital defense stations hung in space as twisted metal wreckage. Debris fields marked where cargo ships and civilian transports had tried to evacuate. "Sir, Lieutenant," Park Dong-yeon called from the tactical station, his voice shaking with rage. "I count over 200 enemy vessels. They're Keth hegemony warships, and they're bombarding the civilian settlements on the planet's surface." Through the view screen, Captain Yoon could see the flashes of energy weapons striking the planet below. Each burst of light represented homes being destroyed, families being killed, children who would never grow up. "Open a channel to the Keth fleet," he ordered. The alien commander who appeared on screen was a massive creature with battle scars covering his armored hide. "Human vessel. You will withdraw immediately or be destroyed. This system now belongs to the Keth hegemony." "Those are innocent civilians you're murdering," Captain Yoon replied, his voice deadly quiet. The Keth commander laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "In war, there are no innocents. Surrender your technology or watch your colony burn, Captain." Yoon closed the channel and turned to his crew. "All hands, battle stations. Tactical, I want firing solutions on every enemy vessel." "Sir," Lieutenant Park hesitated, "there are over 200 ships down there." "Then we better work fast. Atlas, activate all weapon systems, override safety protocols. Authorization Yoon Alpha 7. What happened next would forever change how the galaxy viewed human warfare. The Keth hegemony had spent centuries perfecting their military tactics, built on the foundation of gradual conquest and intimidation. They fought wars the way the galaxy had always fought wars, with rules, limitations, and the understanding that some lines should never be crossed. Humanity had different ideas. The Prometheus didn't engage in the traditional dance of space combat that alien civilizations had practiced for millennia. There were no warning shots, no attempts to disable enemy vessels, no opportunities for surrender. Instead, the human warship methodically eliminated every Keth vessel in the system with clinical precision. Quantum torpedoes found their targets. With perfect accuracy, energy beams sliced through alien hulls like they were made of paper. The adaptive combat AI calculated optimal firing patterns that maximized destruction while minimizing ammunition expenditure. Within 18 minutes, over 200 Keth warships had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Not a single enemy vessel escaped. Not a single human shot missed its target. The silence that followed was deafening. The footage from New Geneva spread across the galaxy like a virus, transmitted through every communication network, analyzed by every intelligence, agency, and discussed in hushed whispers in every corner of civilized space. What the humans had done at New Geneva wasn't just a military victory. It was the complete destruction of everything the galaxy thought it understood about warfare. On the Altarian homeworld, Defense Minister Kel Vash sat in his private study, watching the battle recordings for the 100th time. His species had been the galaxy's premier military power for over 2,000 years, and their war colleges taught the fundamental principles that every civilized society followed. "Computer, analyze the human engagement patterns," he commanded. The artificial intelligence responded with clinical precision. "Minister, The humans violated 43 separate articles of the Galactic Warfare Convention. They provided no opportunity for surrender, offered no quarter to disabled vessels, and eliminated every enemy combatant without exception. Minister Kelvash rubbed his temples, feeling a headache that had persisted for days. They fought like savages from the old times. Correction, Minister. Analysis suggests they fought with technological superiority applied through doctrines, developed in complete isolation from galactic civilization. They appear to have no knowledge of conventional warfare limitations. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place in government buildings, military academies, and diplomatic missions. The Battle of New Geneva had revealed a terrifying truth. Humanity had developed their military philosophy without any external influence, creating something that the galaxy hadn't seen in 3 millennia. On the capital world of the Galactic Council, Elder Morden convened an emergency session with representatives from the major civilizations. The ancient being had lived through the last great war that had nearly destroyed galactic civilization, and he recognized the signs of approaching catastrophe. "My fellow counselors," he began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, "we face a crisis unlike any in recorded history. The humans have reminded us of something we had forgotten. War without rules is absolute destruction." Ambassador Velnash of the Rigelian Combine stood to address the assembly. "Elder Morden, 3,000 years ago, our ancestors signed the Treaty of Eternal Peace specifically to prevent this kind of warfare. We agreed to limit our weapons, protect civilian populations, and allow for honorable surrender because we had learned that total war leads to total annihilation. But the humans never signed that treaty," Elder Morden replied gravely. "They never learned our hard-won lessons about the horrors of unlimited warfare. To them, conflict means using every available resource to eliminate threats completely." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Every species represented had evolved their military doctrine within the framework of galactic civilization's rules. They had weapons capable of destroying planets, but treaties prevented their use. They had strategies for total conquest, but agreements limited their application. Humanity had none of these restrictions because they had never been told these restrictions existed. "What do we do?" asked General Crexton of the Zephyrian Empire, his forearms gesturing helplessly. "Our combined fleets are still approaching human space, but after New Geneva, our war simulations show catastrophic casualties." Elder Morden activated a holographic display showing the positions of various fleets throughout the galaxy. "Many of our member species are already recalling their ships. The hegemony of Keth has requested emergency peace negotiations after losing their entire assault fleet. The proud warriors who demanded humanity's surrender last week are now begging for talks. Can we integrate them into our system?" asked Ambassador Yeltar. "Can we teach them our ways of civilized warfare?" "The question," Elder Morden said, quietly, "is whether they will want to learn, and whether the galaxy can survive long enough for them to accept our limitations on how wars should be fought." The Kepler Station conference room had been expanded 3 times to accommodate representatives from 18 different species, but it still felt cramped with the weight of galactic history pressing down on everyone present. Ambassador Song. Kana sat at the human delegations table, flanked by Admiral Choi Daeho and Dr. Lee Minji, humanity's chief xenobiologist. Across from them, alien diplomats filled chairs, hover platforms, and specialized atmospheric pods designed for species that breathed different gases. The tension was so thick it seemed to have its own gravitational field. Elder Morden called the session to order with his ceremonial staff, its crystalline head glowing with ancient authority. "We gather today to prevent a war that could destroy civilizations. Let us begin with the fundamental principles that have maintained galactic peace for 3,000 years." What followed was a presentation that left the human delegation speechless. The aliens unveiled a comprehensive system of warfare limitations that read more like a sporting event rulebook than military doctrine. Article 7 of the Galactic Warfare Convention, read Ambassador Velnash, prohibits the use of weapons capable of rendering entire worlds uninhabitable. Article 12 forbids targeting civilian populations. Article 21 requires a 48-hour grace period for enemy forces to surrender before engaging in battle. Song Hana listened to dozens of such rules, each one more restrictive than the last. Finally, she raised her hand to speak. Honored delegates, I need to understand something. You're describing warfare as if it's a carefully choreographed dance. Where we come from, war means survival or extinction. A ripple of uncomfortable murmurs spread through the alien delegations. General Thaxmore of the Zephyrian Empire leaned forward, his scarred face showing confusion. Ambassador Song, surely your species understands the importance of limiting destruction in conflict. General, Song Hana replied calmly, let me share humanity's perspective. When we developed our military technology, we assumed we would face enemies who wanted to completely destroy us. We built our weapons and strategies based on one simple principle. If someone threatens our families, our children, our way of life, then we use every tool available to stop them. Dr. Lee Minji activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Our planet has witnessed countless wars where entire civilizations were wiped out. We learned that showing mercy to an enemy who offers none is a luxury that extinct species can't afford. The alien delegates stared at images of human conflicts spanning millennia. Unlike their own carefully regulated wars, human history showed a pattern of total commitment to victory, regardless of cost. But surely, interjected Councillor Zethra, her scales shifting to deep purple with distress, you understand that unlimited warfare leads to mutual annihilation. Admiral Choi Dae-ho spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades preparing for humanity's survival. Counselor, we understand it perfectly. That's exactly why we built weapons capable of ensuring that anyone who threatens us faces certain destruction. It's not cruelty, it's deterrence. The summit sessions stretched into weeks as both sides struggled to find common ground. The aliens couldn't comprehend how a species could develop such devastating military capabilities and then refuse to accept limitations on their use. The humans couldn't understand how civilizations could survive by agreeing to fight with self-imposed handicaps. You're asking us to tie one hand behind our backs, Song Hana explained during a particularly heated exchange. What happens when we face an enemy who doesn't follow your rules? That's impossible, replied Elder Morden. Every civilized species in the galaxy has agreed to these conventions. Song Hana's response echoed through the chamber with prophetic clarity. Elder, until last month you didn't know we existed. How many other civilizations are out there who never received your invitation to play by your rules? The signing ceremony took place in the Grand Assembly Hall of Kepler Station, with representatives from 19 species witnessing what would become known as the most important diplomatic event in galactic history. Ambassador Song Hana held the crystalline data pad containing the Treaty of Kepler, its terms hammered out through 6 weeks of intense negotiations that had tested everyone's patience and sanity. Article 1, she read aloud for the assembled delegates. Humanity agrees to limit construction of Prometheus-class vessels and designates all existing ships as defensive platforms only. Elder Mordun nodded approvingly from his ceremonial podium. After weeks of deadlock, they had finally reached an agreement that seemed to satisfy both sides. The galaxy would have peace, and humanity would have recognition as a sovereign member of the galactic community. What the aliens didn't fully understand was how humans defined defensive. Admiral Choi Dae-ho watched the ceremony with barely concealed amusement. During the negotiations, he had carefully avoided explaining that humanity's 12 completed warships were equipped with quantum drive systems capable of reaching any point in known space within 72 hours. The aliens had assumed defensive platforms meant ships that stayed close to human colonies. 3 months after the treaty signing, the first test of this interpretation came when the Raxian Confederacy attempted to blockade a human trade route near the Vega system. The local Raxian commander, Admiral Zektar, believed he was dealing with a species that had agreed to limit their military capabilities. He was wrong. The HSS Defender, one of humanity's defensive platforms, arrived in the Vega system exactly 18 hours after the blockade began. Captain Park Sun-woo didn't fire a shot. He didn't need to. "Raxian vessels," he broadcast on all frequencies. "You are interfering with legitimate human commerce. You have 30 minutes to withdraw from this system." Admiral Zektar responded with typical alien military protocol. "Human ship, we are conducting lawful military exercises in neutral space. We suggest you withdraw to avoid any unfortunate incidents." Captain Park's reply became legendary throughout the galaxy. "Admiral, you have 29 minutes remaining. After that, your presence here will be considered a direct threat to human interests, and we will respond defensively." The Raxian commander studied his tactical displays, which showed a single human ship facing his squadron of 47 vessels. According to traditional galactic military thinking, the odds were overwhelmingly in his favor. 28 minutes later, the Raxian fleet departed the system at maximum speed. Word of the Vega incident spread quickly through diplomatic channels. The galaxy began to understand that humanity's concept of defensive was somewhat different from their own. If human interests were threatened anywhere in known space, a Prometheus-class ship would arrive within 3 days, and its mere presence was usually sufficient to resolve the situation. Dr. Yim Soo-jin, humanity's chief diplomatic analyst, explained it to the Galactic Council during their quarterly review session. "Honored delegates, humans have always believed that the best defense is ensuring that potential aggressors understand the consequences of their actions. But Captain Park threatened to destroy an entire fleet over a trade dispute," protested Ambassador Velnash. "No," Dr. Yim corrected gently. "Captain Park offered to defend human commercial interests. The Raxian commander chose to interpret that as a threat. The subtle distinction was lost on no one. Humanity had agreed to use their warships only for defense, but they had never agreed to limit what they considered worth defending. Human trade routes, human colonies, human citizens, human allies, and increasingly, human interpretations of justice all fell under their defensive umbrella. Within a year of the Treaty of Kepler, galactic civilization had adapted to a new reality. The age of carefully choreographed, limited warfare was over. In its place came an era of uneasy peace, maintained by the simple understanding that somewhere in space, 12 human warships waited patiently to defend their species' definition of acceptable behavior. The galaxy had gained peace, but at the cost of learning that humans considered the entire known universe their neighborhood, and they took neighborhood watch very seriously.